Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. My name is Ben Jackson, I'll be your host as per usual. And once again, I'm joined by Scott and welcoming back Joris. How are you guys doing this evening?
Hi guys, hello everyone.
Yeah, let's not talk about how we're doing, but let's just dive in straight away.
Definitely, and we believe that this is our 100th episode, which is pretty exciting. Not much you can really celebrate when you're recording on a Monday night in terms of drink and stuff, but if you are listening, hopefully you'll have a Belgian beer on us to celebrate our 100th episode. Obviously, massive thanks to Joris and Scott. Without you guys all together, the three of us putting this together, it's been good so far, but looking forward to the next 100 as well. We've had some great ones over the year and a bit that we've been a podcast. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have anything to add on that.
Yeah, no, it's been an absolute blast, and the exciting thing is there's so much more to come from us as well.
Anyway, let's dive straight into the action. There was plenty this weekend. Starting on Friday night, we had St. Truiden against Mechelen. This one finished 1 goal apiece. We then went into the Saturday game. Cercle Bruges hosted Genk. That finished 2 goals apiece. One team did finally get a win to kickstart the weekend. That was Union. They had a dramatic win against Kortrijk, 3-2. Club Brugge absolutely dominated Solang from start to finish. It was a Skov Olsen show once again. They won 5-0 away from home. In the derby Sunday, we had Antwerp just about sneak past bottom side Beerschot, 2-1. Anderlecht beat Oostende reasonably comfortably, 3-0 at home. Charleroi and Standard played out a good atmosphere, but not great performance-wise on the pitch, 0-0. Ghent with a dramatic winner against Zulte Waregem. And then Eupen finally got a win with a very good, decent performance against Leuven. They won 3-1. Let's start with the Canaries against Malinois. Lots of chances for Mechelen to kind of start this game. Bit surprised that it took them half an hour to score, really. Heremans had a few, Storm, Kuipers all had a chance. But it was Kuipers who got the opening goal. A little bit of defensive mix-up between Texera and Schmitz gave Kuipers the chance to kind of run onto the ball at a very tight angle, actually. It was a really good finish from him, and that gave them the 1-0 lead. St. Truiden tried. Konate had a couple of chances in the first half. They did get 13 shots off, so they more than matched Mechelen's 11. Both teams with 5 shots on target as well, so really pushing. In the week, João Klaus has been announced he's going to be moving to the MLS, but he managed to get a start in this game. Interesting, which is actually quite interesting, actually, when you think of that. He hasn't really started the last couple of games, and the moment he announces that he's going to move, he gets a start. Always seems a bit weird when that happens, but he was on, and he scored I believe it's his first goal for St. Truiden since moving from Standard to Hoffenheim and back out on loan again to St. Truiden. A really nice header at the back post from him, and that's how it finished. Neither side could get a winner in this one. A result that for St. Truiden, that pretty much ends any sort of slim chance at a playoff 2 run. They're now 6 points behind Genk. For Mechelen, it's probably the opposite in terms of it kind of solidifies their place in the second playoff position. Obviously, there's still we don't know about the Leuven game and what's going to happen there. But at the moment, they are, I think it's 8 points adrift of Anderlecht with a potential game in hand, but even then that's going to be quite difficult. Scott, do you think this was a missed opportunity for Mechelen in this game?
I think it would be possible to look at it that way. I mean, I think this is a game that kind of panned out like quite a lot of games have for Mechelen over the course of the season, where they were pretty good on the whole in the first half and not quite at it in the second half. They just kind of petered out of the game a little bit, really, for me. Certainly had enough chances to win it on the whole, and they would argue that they probably should. But this is a problem they've had for a long time as well sometimes, and it's just maintaining that performance level for 90 minutes. They've had spells where when they've fallen out of games before, they've obviously been aware of it and gone away and worked on it, and then gone on, quite an impressive run on a few occasions when that's happened. And this is kind of history repeating a wee bit, I think, here. A draw, arguably, probably fair in the end, considering the way the game panned out. Neither side will be too unhappy with that. Probably St. Truiden will be the slightly unhappier of the two, because, as you were alluding to, they've been pushing kind of quite hard recently for playoff 2. They've been on a really good run, actually, under the radar, not getting much attention, haven't lost in a while either. So they've been picking up points with regularity, including points that you wouldn't have expected them to get. So slightly more disappointing for them Kuipers getting another goal for Mechelen, and he's kind of really firmly now their main man up front, is actually having a really, really good season. I think kind of better than most people imagined he would have. I think other people saw Ferdy Droyf, who's obviously no longer at the club, the kind of likely main man at the start of the season, but it hasn't turned out that way. Kuipers is looking really good and has a really good understanding with that team now. And I'll be interested to see what they do in the summer, actually, because there could be a wee bit of interest in him, I think.
There might. I recall myself also saying in the winter transfer window that they were relying overly on the goals of Storm, but he definitely stepped it up in the last few weeks. And indeed, what was it, his 10th goal or something, or 9th or 10th at least? So he's getting a nice score of goals there. Well, for the rest, I guess you both said it all already. So basically a two-faced game again. First half for Mechelen, second half for Sint-Truiden. The logical result is what you would think then. One thing in defense for Mechelen is that they had quite a few absentees in this game, of course. So, but yeah, also, I guess indeed this was probably the game that was the last chance for them to get into playoff 1 instead of playoff 2, which they should easily reach still. 1-1, all in all, fair result, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. And on Kuipers, I was the same, Scott. I thought Droyf was going to be the main man, but yeah, Kuipers has come and he's done a good job, and I think it'd be good for him to stick around there. Obviously, he was at Olympiacos, wasn't he, before, and didn't quite work out for him there. So maybe when you find a good thing and you've got a good thing going with that kind of the forward line that they have as well, it's always better to kind of enjoy it while it lasts and maybe stick around with before kind of getting your head turned, I guess.
I'm going to correct myself here quickly. So it's apparently even 11 goals, and in the last 6 games, 5 goals and 1 assist, and evenly spread across. In each game, he got either a goal or an assist, evenly spread. So his form is probably one of the best in the league.
There we go. Even better. We even underestimated him a little bit there. Let's move on to the Saturday game. Cercle Bruges against Genk. Both shots, according to the stats I've got in front of me, both teams, managed 17 shots overall, and both of them managed 6 shots on target. Quite an entertaining one from what I saw of this one. Cercle Bruges took the lead in the 36th minute. Just kind of like quite easy for them in the sense that it's like a little ball over the top. Matondo running on. I think it's Preciado and Van der Voort just getting a bit kind of mixed up, not really neither kind of taking control of the situation. Matondo kind of sneaks through. Looks like he's dragged it a little bit too far wide and should hit it with his left foot, but he cuts back onto his right and then puts it into the net anyway. So that put them 1-0 up. And into the second half, Sene Mayang got another goal. He got his goal from a set piece from Dino Hotic. At that point, Cercle were pretty happy with what was going on. But literally 5 minutes later, it was 2-2. Tia Bongonda got the first for Genk to get them back into the game. And then Brian Heynen got one 4 minutes later to make it 2 apiece. And from then on, it was kind of anyone's game, really. Ito hit the post, Denki hit the crossbar, but neither side could find that winning goal. Joris, obviously, with Genk and with you back, I'll start with you on this one. What are your kind of thoughts now after the game? Are you happy with the draw? Do you feel like with some of the chances that Genk had that they could have won this one?
A bit of both. They could have won it, but in the end, in this game, it was important not to lose, to not bring Cercle back into the race of playoff 2. Although, of course, being Genk and trying not to be too cocky either, but like in a game against Cercle, you really expect to win, even though, of course, Cercle is doing a brilliant job. So there are some mitigating factors also coming back from 2-0 down. I'll take the points definitely now. There were some chances still, even though like in the first half, Cercle were really the better side, but they didn't create that much out of that, luckily, even though they did get a goal. But even at that time, Genk had a few, not many, but a few breakouts that should have been converted better. Also another shot, or a header on the bar as well. Got a stat on that. Also, I've got a stat for Cercle, but for Genk, like it's 17 times now that they hit the woodwork. Only Anderlecht have done more. It's only a small part of the story why this season is a disappointment, of course, but sometimes it's just a few inches away from it to sneak a point, to steal a point, or to get a deserved 3-pointers over the line. And for Cercle, I had the stat that, Mianga's goal was the 20th goal already of the season on set pieces from Cercle. which amounts to almost 50%, I think. So really incredible high there. They also got 11 corners, yes. So it was bound to happen. I was not surprised. In the end, also again a bit of a deserved draw. Again, I guess indeed it was anyone's game in the second half, but I do think Genk fought themselves back into the game. I want to give a honorable mention to Aziz, who actually brought the fight that was lacking a bit in the first half, and brought some fighting spirits. He won most of his duels as well. Not all of them, but at least he was going for it, and it seems to have worked a bit. And then after the quick comeback to 2-2, I was still, of course, hoping for more still, but all in all, a draw was deserved.
Yeah, I think it was definitely a game of the weekend, this one, and it had that written all over it even beforehand. Two sides obviously going for playoff 2 really, really hard. There was a lot of stake in this game, I think. I remember saying to Joris at half-time when we were watching it that, Genk needed to work a bit harder, because actually, although Circle played well in the first half and with the better side, I think there wasn't a great deal in it, in truth. And once Genk did up it a little bit, which is exactly what they did in the second half, they got themselves kind of right back into the game very, very quickly. Just as a little aside, I actually missed both Genk goals. I went to the toilet and did what our Ben sometimes does, left the room for probably less than 5 minutes, which is what it took for Genk to score both their goals. So I had to go back and have a look at them. So never leave the game while you're watching it live, folks, otherwise you'll miss half the action.
Well, especially I thought that I didn't mention it, but like it was straight after the break, so choose your moments to go.
When nature calls, you just have to listen. No, that's the problem, isn't it? I've found that. So if I'm watching a game that your team is playing in, just ask me to leave the room at any point, and potentially there'll be a goal, but I can't guarantee who it'll be for. But yes, that does happen to me a lot. Even happened to me this weekend. I was watching Fortuna Düsseldorf on Sunday, and every time I left the room, they scored and they won 3-0. So missed all of those. But yeah, no, definitely entertaining game. We then had to follow that up with a 5-goal thriller in Kortrijk. Didn't manage to see this one myself, but did manage to see the winning goal. But before all that happened, it was Faiz Selemani once again leading the way for Kortrijk. He opened the scoring on the 8th minute, but 5 minutes later, Union were back in the game. Kasper Nielsen, and that made it 1 apiece going into half-time. Remember, no Dante Vanzier for Union Saint-Gilloise. Also interesting that it was Puertas who started up front alongside Undav in this one as well. Matomi on the bench into the second half, 67th minute. It's the centre-back that scores this time. Ismail Kandus gives Union a 2-1 lead. However, much like the lead for Kortrijk, this one didn't last that long either. Just 10 minutes later, Selemani again in the 76th minute makes it 2 goals. Both sides had chances. However, it was Dennis Undav with a fantastic strike to win the game on the 87th minute. And I think this sums up what me and Scott were talking about last week, how they really did struggle, Union, against Erpen without someone like an Undav or Vanzer up front to get kind of over the line. Whereas you stick one of them into the side, this time just one of them at least, and they give you that opportunity to get over the line. Massive win for them, because that would have been 2 draws on the bounce. It would have been quite a little bit of pressure would have started to be rising on them. However, this kind of gives them a little bit more breathing space. For Kortrijk, on the other hand, I mean, it was always going to be a tough game, but they definitely gave it their all, which they always do. If you're interested, What Load of Waffle on Twitter he did a really good interview with Brian Reynolds, the right back who came on loan from Roma. And it's just really interesting to see why he chose Kortrijk, if he's enjoying it, all that sort of stuff. So I definitely recommend that interview if you get the chance. Scott and Joris, I guess we'd have expected on paper Union to win this one, but with Kortrijk, you always know they're going to be difficult. But in the end, massive 3 points, and having Dennis Undav back was just such a big win for them.
Yeah, it was a pretty entertaining game, this one, actually. Kortrijk gave as good as they got, I thought, for the most part. Union, again, playing quite well, and Dennis Undav just, scoring a brilliant goal to win it, really. You'd be happy with that goal to win any game. Just takes it with his back towards goal, turns and hits it instinctively, knows what he's trying to do. But the lovely thing about it, I thought, was you could tell by his reaction that he just couldn't believe that it had come off for him. But that's kind of been the story of Union's season, you know what I mean? The kind of confidence and positivity to try things like that has been continually rewarding them a lot. And I think they did deserve it. And I think it's good for lots of reasons that they're able to get over the line in this game. I thought that it was interesting to see Dennis Undav posing for selfies with Kortrijk fans fans after the game. It was just nice to see the home support so appreciative of the away side and their own players as well. I mean, I know a lot of football fans say, well, why do you want a selfie with an opposition player? But some things kind of, go a little bit beyond the kind of partisan tribal nature of football. And I kind of quite like those things. And it shows you kind of how much Dennis Undav has been embraced kind of beyond Union's fandom, that fans of other clubs really appreciate, just that brilliance. And it was a brilliant winner. Union will be particularly pleased to have won it, not just because of, it maintains that slight numerical advantage that's so important at this stage of the season. Of course, Fayez Selemani, who's everyone knows used to play for Union, very, very nearly kind of spoiled the day for them as well. So to kind of get away from the Golden Sporran with the 3 points and with that advantage maintained will be particularly pleasing to Felix Magath, because I think the journalists were sat at their keyboards ready to talk about how a former Union man had managed to stop them getting the 3 points, which is not what happened in the end.
Yes, and he didn't want to come back to that painful story of his departure to Union in the post-match interviews himself either. So I think there's still no love lost between those two sides. From what we've all heard as well. Maybe not in this game particularly, but it might be useful to say that Kortrijk captain De Haan is out for the rest of the season, so that's going to be a blow for them on the one hand. On the other hand, it also meant that Mesatou made his professional debut for them on the left wing side, and he did a decent job. It's always nice to give to debuts boys a mention, so he did a decent job, especially considering he was playing against the top team in the league at the moment. Definitely, especially the first hour, I think he later on fell a bit back in his level, but I think that's normal for his game at the pro level. Very uncharacteristic first goal for Kortrijk, of course. It was a very, very weird phase, and Kandus gave the goal away basically, but he did reconcile himself with his first pro goal ever. I believe it was something in the first not pro goal but first goal in the first division of any country, as Will Downing, our previous guest, has mentioned plenty actually during that game. He redeemed himself there. I'm still wondering if Maurice should have gotten something for that punch he gave right before that first goal, but okay, that's a discussion in the margin. That was a very weird phase anyway. And well, few more things. So Nielsen had with a Nielsen Classic that goal. Teams still don't get that they definitely don't need to let him shoot from that distance, especially on a ball rolling there in this direction. Yeah, I don't know how many goals he got now, 5 or 6, and most of them are in this similar fashion. And Illich, despite the loss and despite conceding 3, still had some top saves. One in the first half, one in the second half. Really had some good things going there. Good. You guys talked about him last week as well. He's definitely also moving up on the ladder of like goalkeepers of the season. In my mind already. One of these saves was against Newcop, who afterwards then also almost scored from like 5 centimeters out, I guess, but he mishit the ball, not really by his fault. Usually these balls will go in, but it just bounced on him and over the top over the goal instead of inside. So it was just not his day for scoring. In the end, they probably will have a good laugh about it, since Undav still came with his strike in Mazu time. Yeah, it used to be a saying. It used to be a saying in when he was at Charleroi, they always scored in the final minutes, in the dying minutes, and it comes probably from Fergie time as well, for the English listeners. But the late winners are definitely a trademark for size of his. Yeah, they did it again, and that definitely was good for them. Especially, I think also with Club Brugge, probably already they had to play straight afterwards. So we'll get to that game soon. But probably already waiting for the final whistle there and hoping to get good news there, and then getting a little blow, of course, in this game. For them, it did not happen, as we will come to now.
Amazing transition. Love that. Yeah, no, I was on Illich, like, I was just trying to think while you were speaking, like trying to remember if he, like, the mistakes he's made this year compared to some other keepers, but I can't really recall many, if any, from him. He's been really consistent.
There's a few, like, he still remains a bit, I don't have a specific example, but he remains a bit shaky on crosses and high balls coming in. So I guess he missed some there, but yeah, in general, like definitely a good, really good line keeper for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely agree with that. As you said, Club Brugge, they went to Sarang, and it's one of those games where before the game you don't give the team at the bottom much of a chance, but sometimes these sort of matches you find that the team near the bottom just like up their game massively and frustrate, and like it ends up being like a 1-0 or 0-0 or something like that. But that didn't happen because Mr. Skov Olsen, who was clearly so full of confidence after listening to our podcast last week, decided to just have an absolute game and absolute tear Sarang apart. 3 minutes in, he'd already opened the scoring. He then gets an assist for Matt Ritz's goal on the 29th minute. Poor Michael Dierslam just joined a couple of weeks ago into Sarang. His first goal for the club was an own goal. This came a couple of minutes after the youngster Matthew Kakbak was sent off in the 41st minute. So at half time, I believe it was already up to 4. Slowed down in the second half. Bas Dost came off the bench to get his token tap-in of a goal. But yeah, it was an absolute Skov Olsen show in this one. He just completely took Sarang to the sword. And I mean, it's hard to be harsh on Sarang given who they were up against, like Club Brugge with a little bit of form, coming off the back of a cup defeat. So we're clearly frustrated and had a point to prove. But Sarang this season, since the winter break, I think they have scored 3 goals. 2 of those in one game against Beerschot on the 26th of Jan. They haven't scored since that 26th of Jan. Didn't score against Eupen, Charleroi, Antwerp, Ghent, Zultewaregem, and now Club Brugge. They just can't score a goal. They had only like 2 shots on target. Obviously trying to play on the counter-attack against Club Brugge, but it was just so comfortable for Club Brugge, wasn't it, guys? Like 5-0 probably could have been more if they'd really wanted to. Interesting, no Noah Lang on the score sheet. He hasn't scored for a while, I don't think, or got an assist. He's really kind of slowed down. It seems bizarre, obviously, to criticise Noah Lang once they just won 5-0. And it's not necessarily a criticism, but more of kind of like an observation that last season when they were winning games like this, he was kind of at the heart of everything that was going on. He was kind of like the main player getting everything done, whereas now it's kind of Skov Olsen's doing that, having just come in. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like he is a potential golden shoe candidate for the end of this year if he continues on this form, because obviously the weird way it works over the entire year, like, yeah, I mean, not surprised, but also a couple of kind of interesting things with Noah Lang scoring and stuff like that, I guess.
I think Noah Lang is more or less on his holidays now, in the sense that I think he's thinking about his summer move. I think he's looked not particularly interested for a little while. I know that when Alfred Schroeder came in and he started to tweak the system a little bit and ask some different things to some of the players there in terms of what they had been playing for a while, I think Noah Lang was one of those players who took slight exception to some of those things. And I don't know how much of that is a factor, but I think the biggest factor for me anyway is his eye on what happens in the summer, I think. And, you know, you can almost reach out and kind of touch that now in a way. He just seems to have sort of lost interest at the same time as the new managers come in. So, you know, maybe coincidence, maybe not. Difficult to tell, but there's a number of things kind of coming together at the same time. The interesting thing with Sarang for me actually is Sarang have the lowest Xg differential in the league. Based on their XG across the season, they should have scored approximately 7 goals more than they have. Now, obviously that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you bear in mind that Sarang don't draw games, they win them or lose them, mostly lose them, as they have been for a while, you do wonder how many extra points those potential 7 goals that they should have got based on their XG return could have gotten them. It must be very frustrating to look at some of those numbers and think, well, you know, if we'd met our XG, which you don't always, it's important to underline that just because your XG numbers reflect whatever they reflect, it doesn't mean you're going to achieve them, of course. Football would be very easy if it equated naturally to that, but it doesn't. But it is interesting when you look at the breakdown, because potentially they could be at least one place, if not a couple of places above where they are, if they'd managed, as Ben was saying, to convert plenty of the chances that they create. Because that's the thing about them, actually. They do create enough chances to win games, and to win games reasonably convincingly. And the problem is they haven't been doing it. And as we said recently when they lost away to Zalta, what Sarang don't have is a Gano or a Vossen, a strike partnership that is proven at that level, who can generally do it in games where it matters. They do have Georges Mikatadze, who we know actually is an excellent striker and is more than capable of handling himself at this level. There's no doubt about it. I think it's a lot to ask one person to kind of carry the load, and ultimately for the best part of the season he's been doing that, and I think that has affected some of his performances kind of negatively. So although he continues to work very hard and get into the right space and create opportunities for himself, not taking them has hit everybody's confidence a little bit as well. So when I was looking at those numbers over the last few days, that was the thing that kind of really just thought that XG is really going to strangle you guys in the end, I think.
Coming back to Lang, yeah, I think indeed it's a bit of a holiday mode, or okay, there's also a few reasons, but let's look at his numbers for in the league this season. So he got 6 goals and 12 assists, but since the winter break, he featured in 7 games. In these 7 games, he got 0 goals and 2 assists. So that means before the break, he already had 6 goals and 10 assists, and only 2 assists coming afterwards. Of course, also a little bit less playing time, but even then, enough playing time to make a difference, and there's a reason why there's less playing time as well, I think. And it's not only because there's also indeed a bit more of a competition going there, but yeah, it's remarkable indeed. He should be doing better, I think, at the moment, but it doesn't affect the points they're raking in so far, so that's important for them, obviously. And then coming back to Serrain, yeah, it's not only talking about XG, but also just talking the real numbers. Like now they have the least good attack in 26 goals scored, and since last weekend and since the results of last weekend, they are now equal to Zulte Waregem and Beerschot at the worst defenses of the country. So yeah, worst attack and worst defense is actually already in a way also a miracle that they're with these numbers not actually in the last place and even quite safely off last place still, but that's an entirely different thing. Now, I didn't realize that they hadn't scored that long, but now Ben mentioned it, so that would have been a fun goal of the month celebration for on social media for say in February, since they didn't score any. Just like, I guess the gag is already old, but the Premier League teams that did that a few years ago when they did not score. Yeah. 5th loss in a row, another red card as well, so they keep on getting those as well, so that's not never a good sign, of course. On the other hand, Club Brugge won 4 games in a row now in the league after I think they also had some additional revenge feelings, I guess, after being kicked out of the cup, but we'll talk about that in a while as well. But yeah, that loss probably also helped to really want to make a statement here. Also, talking about Skov Olsen, he really did have a really good game, but I wouldn't draw too many good conclusions for the rest yet. I do believe he's a really good player, but it's also just a game against a mostly 10-man Serrain, which is in a very bad form. So really talking about golden shoe and all, I think it's not the right time and place at the moment yet. It might come. I'm not excluding that for sure. That I do think he's off on a good track, but just don't have too hasty conclusions.
You're trying to make sure we don't put the curse on him too quickly. I appreciate that. I can get behind that. Yeah, just running those numbers on goal scoring, I think you're right. It's maybe it's 8 goals for Mikatadze, I think, and 7 goals for Maziz. Next one's 4 with Jallo, and then I don't think anyone's into more than 1 then. Obviously, Jallo's been out for quite a while since coming back from AFCON. So it'd be good to have him back. But Maziz and Mikatadze were the guys that got the goals and the assists against Beerschot to win that game. And so if they're not doing it, no one's doing it. So yeah, interesting. We spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, actually, kind of form going into the playoff and stuff like that. And I don't know, even if Selang survived the playoff, what is the long-term strategy there in terms of in the summer, what's the recruitment going to be like? At least they'll know a little bit more about what they need, but can they go and get it? Are they just going to get the Mets guys in again? Probably not enough. Considering who might come up and who's down there. So obviously these are all things for the future and we'll see how it goes, but they definitely could do with at least scoring a goal in the next game. That'd be massive. The side below them had a tough game in the derby with Antwerp, but they gave themselves a chance to really get back into this race, probably for the playoff spot. Mr. Joran Dom, guys, we need to speak about Joran Dom being Beerschot's top scorer again and keeping hold of that mantle going into this game. He gave them the lead in the 42nd minute of this one, and Beerschot they'd set up how they wanted to set up. They knew they wanted to hit Antwerp on the break. They were happy to let them have the ball. They said, okay, you try and break us down, we'll try and hit you on the break. Managed to do that. Joran Dom gives them the lead going into half time. Second half begins. Antwerp obviously still pressing for the equaliser. equaliser, and they got that in the 62nd minute. Mikkel Frey, obviously, who else, with a really, really nice finish, actually. Balikwisha with a really nice turn of pace on the edge of the box, gets deep towards the byline, crosses it in. No marking on Frey, I mean, because he's clearly small and you can not see him. He's so diminutive, but massive, massive leg poked out, puts it in the bottom corner, straight into the fans to celebrate. He does have that kind of passionate playing on the edge thing, doesn't he, guys? Where he just wants to get the fans going. He's like, come on, let's go, team, let's go. However, Beerschot didn't lie down. They kept trying to play on the break and do stuff like that, and they kept Antwerp out for the most part. However, in the 73rd minute, Thibaut de Smet gets sent off for... It's hard to describe what it was, I guess. It's kind of like a two-footed lunge, but you got the ball, but it's 2 feet, so it's one of those ones where at the moment it's going to be a red card. However, despite that, Beerschot looked like they'd taken lead just a few minutes later. Really nice counter-attack from Sabui. Lovely cross to Shankland. Shankland's first touch is great, just to cut inside, and his finish is fantastic. However, Benson had been fouled in the build-up to the play, and once you've seen the replay, I think it's pretty clear that Benson was fouled. So that one was chalked off, which, like I was saying, if Beerschot had managed to get out of that game with a win, there'd have been only, I think 4 points behind Sarang going into these last couple of games. So it would have been a massive possibility. However, they didn't even get a point. Mikkel Frey, again, 83rd minute. Set piece comes in, bounce around a little bit. I think Samatta has it, finds its way to Frey. He knocks it in straight over to one of the ball boys, picks up one of the ball boys to celebrate with him, which if I was a ball boy at that height, I'd have been terrified because he's a scary looking bloke, Mikkel Frey. Antwerp hold on. I mean, it almost felt like papering over the cracks, didn't it, really? Because there's a lot of pressure on Brian Frisk at the moment, given how much the club's been put in financially in terms of backing, given those defeats recently, the Mechelen defeat, the Club Bruges defeat. If they'd lost this one, I don't know. I don't think he'd be in a job, would he?
Well, there's a lot of, I think intrigue's probably the right word at the Bostel at the moment. I think that there's been a kind of situation rumbling away in the background now for a little while where there has been some agitation, some anti-Prisk agitation going on, I think, in the boardroom at the Bostel, from what I can gather. Paul Gayson's obviously Antwerp's chairman and owner, has not been happy with a number of things for a few weeks. Some results kind of going against him have resulted in him behaving in a way that, a chairman really shouldn't, and interfering a little bit probably is the right way to describe it. I mean, just a few weeks ago when they dropped points at home against St Truden, he made his feelings kind of quite clear after the game, which is not so bad to do after the game, although it seems that he paid a visit to the dressing room at half-time during this game at the weekend, which didn't go down very well with Brian Prisk, which I can completely understand. I think there were some words exchanged as well between the two, and intriguingly, Brian Prisk didn't do any post-match media afterwards. Obviously, there was a situation with Richie Delat as well, leaving the ground immediately while the game was still ongoing after his substitution as well. So there's a number of interesting things certainly going on at the Bostel just now to kind of keep an eye on, because although for large chunks of the season, as have remarked upon, they haven't been playing what you would call scintillating attacking football, which is what we would all like to see in everybody, of course. It has been effective enough to maintain a consistent playoff one spot and to kind of keep them in the space that they want to be in. So the fact that the chairman and the owner is still agitating a little bit behind the scenes tells me that his own expectations and standards are still not being met. And I think if you're Brian Prisk, you've got to think, well, what can I do? We're right in the space that we want to be in. We're on track effectively for the long term goal at the moment. So calm down, everybody. Just chill, maybe.
Yeah, it's difficult, I guess. It's always something at Antwerp, of course. But I of course, indeed, the play is not so well. They did really need to win this. They only had won one of their last 4 games, I believe, and lost all of the other ones as well, so not even drawing. And this one came, but in a weird fashion. Like, I still don't really know why there was no penalty whistled for Sebawi, because if there was a slide, he went past Buté and then he went down, but he really just had to tap the ball in, so why would he go down if there was no touch from Buté? I can get that the referee would miss that, but I don't get that it's not a clear error or not corrected anyway. So I do get why Beerschot are feeling a bit robbed as well. For the rest, well, there's decisions as well that I could go into. I'll try not to go too far, except Sek not getting a second yellow for something similar to what Torstvedt did with the same referee 2 weeks ago, where he did get a yellow. And in my opinion, even you could give a straight red for that, by the way, even if he didn't give anything here. It was the same referees. Like, the consistency is so lacking. So level, maybe just in general, of the referees. More importantly, I want to throw in a question for you guys. What if Beerschot would have brought Sebawi earlier in the season already? Would they be saved or in a fight for survival already? Or do we think, was he just not ready yet or anything? It's difficult to judge, of course, from behind our discs, but just a question for you guys.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one. I still don't think the rest of the team was ready or would have been good enough. And I think he has been great and he's been good, but they still haven't won with him on the pitch. While he's individually made a difference, I think the rest of the team isn't in the right position to make a difference. I think obviously some other players missing as well, like Ryan Sanusi and others, would have made a difference. And Koulibaly's back now, so I feel like if you'd had them and then had Saburi, then maybe they'd be in a better position. I think they're playing better, but I don't know if he'd have been the difference between them being in the position. Maybe between them being in this position and being in the playoff, maybe. But I don't think he'd have been the difference between them being out of the relegation zone. Scott, I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Ben. It's very difficult to know. I mean, I think there have been little inklings that what he has offered, I think, has been much more positive than, anything else anybody else was bringing. You mentioned Joran Dom being their top scorer with 5 goals, which is kind of unbelievable. So it's difficult to know. Conversely, on the other hand, actually, we were talking about Antwerp, and actually, when you look at their numbers as well, I think it is worth remembering that the foundations of this season for them are entirely laid Michael Frey's feet, because actually, not only has he scored 22 goals, their next highest goal scorer after that is actually Manuel Benson with 5. So it's a bit like Union. If you take out Undav and Van Zier, then obviously there's a worry on Union's part about who's really going to score the goals regularly. But Antwerp would certainly not be in the position that they're in, but for Michael Frey's goals either. So it's really interesting how a side can become very reliant on one person. And we all know how effective Michael Frey can be, and how he has had a great season. Actually, he's been prolific, much more so than I think any of us had imagined. I think if you take him out of that side, then they struggle big time as well. So it does kind of work both ways, these things.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I've been meaning to look this up for a long time, and I finally did look it up. But for Beerschot, the biggest problem, and we've spoken about it, kind of you reevaluate certain things, I guess, in hindsight, was Tisu Dali left at the back end of the last he's deadline day, wasn't it, in January of last year. Since then, they've only won 7 games since he's left. And if you gave them, obviously, those 7 wins this season, they're still right down the bottom there, struggling. I think they'd they'd still be in the relegation playoff zone. And I was thinking about that because this week, obviously, there's been lots of questions about Rafa Holzhauser. He's been on the bench, I think, the last couple of games. And they asked Van der Ligt, okay, why has he been on the bench? And he was like, well, he's not the player we need in the situation we're in. Basically saying that I guess he's not the player for a relegation fight and all that sort of stuff. And I thought that was really interesting because he was kind of quite key to their success, but it was that relationship with Tisu Dali. And if you brought Tisu Dali back in, or maybe Joris, like you say, with Saburi, maybe if you put those two together, maybe Saburi could kind of try and play a similar role to Tisu Dali in terms of being a ball runner, because that's what they've missed. They don't really have someone that can drag the ball forward and take players on. And that's why Saburi's been good, because he actually can do that. You look at the team they put out, Dom's not going to beat players, De Smet doesn't beat players, Petermat doesn't beat players, Sanusi doesn't beat players, Shankland doesn't really beat players, he's a hold-up man. Avenatti doesn't really beat players, he's a hold-up man. Saburi's the only one that's going to take players on and do something with it. And Koulibaly was doing that last year as well. If Holzhauser doesn't have players that can run in behind and do stuff like that, he's not really got anyone to pass to, has he? So I thought that was really interesting in terms of, it looks like Holzhauser's going to be on the bench for the rest of the season. Now they kind of just been okay, he can come on and do some bits. But if you'd told us that last season, that Holzhauser was going to be on the bench and not starting every game for Beerscott, we'd be very confused and think they're doing well without him, but it's just not been the case. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. However, I think we've been saying it's over for them for a while, and then the teams around and above them keep losing to keep them with a little bit of hope. But if they'd won this one, I think they'd be in it for the playoffs, but I just don't think that's going to be the case now. I think even if Solang lose all their games, I don't think Beerscott have it in the run-in to get back up there. Let's turn our attentions to the top of the table. Obviously, that win for Antwerp put pressure on Anderlecht to keep winning to maintain their playoff one position and not allow Ghent a chance to sneak in over them. And they managed to do that at home to Oostend. No goals in the first half. They had loads of chances from set pieces, though. I think Maran, Kwame, a couple of others as well, with chances from corners, but nothing doing there. Second half, they did start to turn on a little bit. Leo Favre opened the scoring in the 50th minute, and this was almost close to being a really, really nice worked goal. His ball into Xerxes, and it went through Xerxes, hit two defenders, and then landed at Favre, who finished it off. But it would have been nicer if it had been the 1-2, like into the box and around the corner sort of pass. But also goes to show that Xerxes, he's such a threat that he attracted two defenders, which created the space for Favre to put it away. However, the goal that should have looked like that finally came. This time, however, it was from the other side, Vacherin and Kwame linking up. Vacherin into Kwame, ball around the corner, Vacherin runs on, makes it 2-0. He is absolutely loving that number 10 shirt. Since getting that, I haven't worked it out, but it feels like he scored more since he got the number 10 shirt, and finished off 3-0. Benito Rahman came on. He got his goal, I think, to remain top scorer for them, or like well and truly close. And I think that's the difference between them and a lot of teams, is that it's kind of goals by committee a lot more. Like all these other players are chiming in. Like Xerxes and Kwame didn't score, but they still win 3-0 because they've got those wide men that can do that. 61% possession for Anderlecht. Oostend, I think they had one or two chances, not much really. All in all, quite a comfortable win for Anderlecht in this one, and quite an important one given kind of the pressure Ghent are putting on that top four and the fixtures to come.
Yeah, I think they really upped their game in the second half. Anderlecht, it's interesting because you look at the numbers, their first half XG, they didn't quite match that, but were rewarded when they upped their game in the second half and did achieve they hit those numbers in the end. Lovely goal by Vacherin, absolutely lovely goal. Go and have a look at that if you get a chance to do that. And Ben's right, he's been good last 2 or 3 weeks particularly. He's actually been flying under the radar for I think quite a number of weeks now. He's certainly it's been picked up the last 2 or 3 weeks, but I would say he's been playing well for at least 4 to 6 weeks now, arguably a little bit longer without getting much credit for it. And then you change your shirt number, of course, and it all changes again. So football's been quite superstitious. There may be something in that which amuses me a little bit. I think Oostend weren't really expected to get anything out of this game. Quitted themselves reasonably well in the first half, I thought. Of course, now managed by somebody who won his league titles, winners' medals while he was at Anderlecht, so he's very well known to the Moves, Yves van der Heij. Yeah, this is just, it would have been a bonus if Oostend had got anything out of this, but they're okay now, so that result's not going to hurt them too much.
Oostende did not play well in general the whole game, I think. They got a few chances in the first half and second half. Anderlecht indeed upped their game a bit. They were bad in the first half, but upped it in the second half. So in the end, unexpected and deserved win, I guess. Not much more to say. I guess you guys covered a lot. Hood suspended could hurt them against Antwerp, but for the rest, that should not affect them too much. Hopefully for them, we'll have to see who will replace him. Important games for Anderlecht coming up with Antwerp and still Ghent as well. So they have hold all their cards in their own hands, but it's definitely also showtime for them.
I mean, if they're really desperate for a centre-back, the man on the touchline still looks in pretty good shape. I reckon he could dust off his suit and put on the kit and maybe put in a shift for 90 minutes. Definitely a good option there if they really are desperate. Let's go to Ghent then, who won again. Really are racking up the points at the moment, really on form. 12th minute, Laurent de Pocher again getting the goal, gave them a 1-0 lead over Zulte Waregem. I mean, they really should have scored more in this game. 27 shots in total. Only 10 on target, but 27 shots. I mean, you'd have expected a bigger scoreline than the one that it ended up with. But at halftime, it was only 1-0. And with the strike force that Zulte Waregem have, if you don't put them away, they can at least score goals. And it was Jelle Vossen again, 2-2 now for him. 70th minute. And it looked like Zulte had grabbed a really, really valuable point away from home at a really informed side. However, I feel like we've been waiting for something like this to sort of happen in world football, where given everything that's going on, a player from the situation in terms of Roman Bezos coming on and scoring the winner, it felt quite fitting in the sense of that it was him that got the winning goal. You could just see the emotion on his face and kind of the team's face when he did put that one away. 94th minute winner for him. Not the best of goalkeeping from Sammy Bossett on this one. Really should have tried to push it a lot further away from the goal than he did. Push it straight to Bezos, who made no mistake with a really, really good finish, actually. Keeps Ghent's good form going. For Zultafar, obviously that win against Salang last week's probably given them enough to be safe. Still 6 points ahead of Salang. However, to only concede 2 goals given the 27 shots is probably a bit of a bonus. And given that Salang got absolutely battered, they'll obviously be upset that they lost in the fashion that they did, but they'll be probably a little bit more heartened given the performance that they put in.
Yeah, Zulta just still cannot win back-to-back games. It's something that continues to elude them. And even last week we were joking that, after their big win against Sarang, it wouldn't surprise us if, the next 3 or 4 games they didn't pick up too many points. And that consistently inconsistent return is definitely back. Ben's right, it was particularly nice to see Roman Bezos score the winner, and in the manner he did as well. Football's funny, it's often emotional at the best of times, but I can't imagine what that must have felt like for him. And it was interesting to see the message he had on underneath his Ghent shirt on his vest. He had scrolled in black capital letters, "Close the skies."
Well, this one, I guess they didn't expect to win being Zultwarim, but Ghent definitely missed Tissoudali in this one. But in the end, it didn't matter. They got a 5th win in a row, I believe, or is it even 6th? 5th league win in a row, and 16 total, I guess. Yeah. Also, second time in a row that they score the winner in the dying minutes, in the last minutes as well. So they've got a bit of hand time themselves there. Quote myself a little. Both Sisako brothers were hitting the woodwork, so that's bit across games, I guess. For Zultwarim, the Sisako hits the woodwork, and also for Standard against Charleroi earlier in the evening. But yeah, of course, the Bezos grabbing the winner definitely is it's a fitting end of the game day, I guess.
Yeah, you just funny what you just mentioned there, Joris, because I feel like don't edit this bit out, but I completely forgot about the Charleroi Standard game. Just completely skipped over it then. Just went straight to the games that actually had goals. So let's go back to that one. It did happen. Obviously, the derby that it finished 0-0, and there wasn't really much to write back from it, was it? I think Scott, me, and you at the end of it were like, "Oh, it was a good atmosphere." And that was pretty much all we could really say. There was a couple of incidents. I think someone threw something at Nicola Raskin, which is obviously stupid, and hopefully they get found and are banned because it's just ridiculous. You shouldn't be doing that. Interesting, we saw Henkenet's in goal again. Bodart has been relegated to the bench. It looks like it's going to be for the foreseeable future now. Still don't think Elson is fully confident in his first 11 yet. Donham was on the bench. Good to see Gilles de Waal back, obviously from that injury. I thought he'd be out for a little bit longer, but it's good to see him back. Yeah, I'd hoped for more from this one. I'd hoped to see a few more goals. However, nothing really much happened. Both teams were trying and pushing, but at the end there's a reason we've kind of just accidentally skipped over it because nothing really happened. I don't know if you guys have anything massively pressing you want to say about this one before we move on to the final game.
Yeah, I think this was one of those games which was low on entertainment but high on atmosphere. But that was about it, really.
Yeah, well, the Sisako effect was the only thing I had for this game as well. So I guess we can move on, yes.
Amazing. I mean, it was worth it just for that fact, I reckon. At least they produced that. Final game of the evening was played at the same time as the Zultafar game against Ghent game, was all the way over in East Belgium in Eupen. They hosted Leuven and they won 3-1. They really, really needed this win and they got it. And you could just see the relief on everyone's faces in the stadium after this one. Gary Magny gave them the lead in the 11th minute. Bit of a deflection on this one, taking it away from Runnison. I feel like if it hadn't been deflected, he'd have probably saved it quite comfortably. The deflection took it in. He looked absolutely delighted with that goal, and everyone all the team did as well. You could tell there's a real sense of, we're going to win this game. Let's go for it. We've got enough about us to do that. However, just 20 minutes later, Leuven were back in it. Matthew Mertens with a really nice finish after a cross along the box. However, Eupen were really good in this game. Like, I think I was saying to you guys when I was watching it, they were playing some really nice football, moving the ball well. It felt more like what we'd seen from them at the beginning of the year. I think having Isaac Nuhu back was really good. I think it helped Preveljak as well, because he just doesn't have to run the channels when Nuhu's there. Like, Nuhu was so full of running, getting into all the channels and stuff. He thought he'd got a goal in the first half, where it was just about offside, but he did get his goal eventually in the second half. Absolutely leathered it at Runnison. I mean, it came at him fast and hard, but you feel like he maybe should have got more behind it. But Nuhu's kind of initial cut inside, I can't remember who he cut inside. I think it might have been Shackler, just left him for dead, completely did him with the cutback, and then a really nice kind of rocket shot into the goal. And yeah, they kind of confirmed the win in the 71st minute. Really poor kind of playing out from the back from Leuven. They really did let Eupen press them high. And I think it might have been Jego winning it in the midfield, or Peters winning it, laying it on to Preveljak, who just lashed it home. You felt the moment he got it in the box in that position with that much space, there was never going to be any other result. I do want to say that I feel like Sebastian de Vries was very lucky to stay on the pitch in this one. There was an instant where Nuhu gets it. I think he goes past Oscar Chow-Ogdenor, and de Vries just comes over and like absolutely smashes him in the head with his elbow. I mean, I know Nuhu's quite small, but I watched it on the replay and I was like, that looks really bad. He got the yellow card for it, but I was like, I've seen red cards given for less than that. I mean, we're not calling for players to get sent off and stuff like that, but we've spoken a bit earlier about consistency. And I don't know if you guys saw that incident, but I remember looking at it and watching it and thinking, yeah, you were never going to get the ball, and there was intent just to foul as well. But then the elbow it didn't look nice to me. Nuhu played on. Thankfully, he was fine.
Yeah, I agree. I saw it, and like I was also like, well, you got lucky there. Yes, definitely. But I can also see why you wouldn't somehow. But yeah,
still it was one of those ones, wasn't it? Like where you're like, oh, it's just one of those like professional fouls, but the replay looked bad. But yeah, like at least it didn't kind of kill the game in that sense. But that's the draw now against Union for Eupen, and then this win. It was a massive kind of back-to-back games for them, and I thought they played really well and they were full value for it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's the win that ultimately is going to see them safe, and the one that they've really needed for a number of weeks now. Highlighting Isaac Nuhu, absolutely. Nuhu is a really good player. Actually, I'm a big fan, so it's good to see him back and to be doing the business as well, because I think he definitely does make a difference, and they miss him when he's not there. And Eupen, who I tipped at the start of the season to go down, and recently it's been looking like they were in danger of possibly doing exactly that. I think they're going to be all right now. So they'll be partying in the East Cantons for another season anyway.
The first win for Eupen since the 11th of December. The first time they scored 3 goals in the league. Is important there, since they had a decent cup run where they did score a few goals. First time 3 goals in the league since the 3rd of October. So yeah, very... They really, really desperately needed that win, and they did. On the other hand, Leuven probably wasted also their last chance for playoff 2. Might hinge a bit on this forfeited game. Well, will it be forfeited or not? The game against Mechelen. If they win that, however, in which way they would win that doesn't matter. But if they win that, it's still 5 points of difference to 8th place, I think, so far. So that will be tough either way. Yeah, indeed. Also, I would say probably save 8 points ahead of Serene now, out of 12 only to go. And that means actually that they might be mathematically safe next week as well. Important for next week as well, then, to highlight that the next game for them is against Zulte Waregem. So that's going to be important. They will have to play it without suspended Preveljak, so that's going to hurt their chances in that. On the other hand, the Rijk at Zulte Waregem is also suspended, so that's 2 players that might have been in a straight duel that are both out suspended. They won't be facing each other, but probably for both teams, it doesn't matter too much anymore.
There's a couple of moments in this game, speaking about Leuven, that I really enjoyed. The Kaba against Agbadou kind of West African battle that we had in this one. There was one moment, I think, ball came into Cabra and he absolutely shoved Agbadou to the floor and ran past him. And Agbadou just sprinted back and shoved him to the floor, nicked the ball and drove on the counter attack. So you could tell there's a bit of beef there. And I think Agbadou's obviously going to be massive for them against Stiltevær again with that strike force.
Also, one last thing to highlight from this game. Well, it's probably not so good, but Maarten's indeed scoring, which was also the last touch of his game because he contracted an injury a bit earlier in the game already. Then he still had the shot in tap in. That was his last action effectively in the game. So let's hope he's all right. But yeah, was significant for enough to mention it here. And
I'm sure many players would prefer that, but I'm sure if you offered it to him, he'd be like, I don't want the goal, I just want to be fit. And he's having a good season as well, actually, goal scoring wise. He's been really important for them, so we wish him all the best in getting back from his injury. Scott, 1B, more than usual, I guess, to talk about, given that we look like we may not, we don't know, who knows, it's almost been confirmed, the new format for next season. So why don't you kind of explain it to us in a way that people who even follow Belgian football might understand, because we know that, systems can be a bit confusing over there.
Well, we finally got confirmation this week of what the format for 1B is going to look like next season. But just before we can have a chat on that, because we definitely should, because that certainly is probably arguably the biggest story in the whole of Belgian football this week, actually, the confirmation of that format. The results this weekend in 1B, with now 5 games to go. Westerlo managed to get another 3 points. They won 2-1 away at Denza. Lommel, who have picked up form in recent weeks, they've now picked up 7 out of 9 in their last 3 games. They won 2-0 away at Liers. Molenbeek are still in the magic playoff spot in second after a 1-0 win at Mouscron, and Beveren are still hunting down Molenbeek ferociously for that playoff spot after a 3-1 home win over Verton. So the gap between Molenbeek and Beveren for that playoff spot is now 5 points in Molenbeek's favour, and of course they are still to play each other as well during these last 5 games, so there is still plenty of drama that could come there yet as well. Verton, on the other hand, they remain rock bottom. They're now 10 points adrift of Lommel and of safety, and I think it would come as a shock for no one to hear me say I think that's curtains for Verton now, unfortunately. I think they're going to drop out of 1B and the professional tiers of Belgian football and return to amateur football. Hopefully they can do that and stay together as well and mount a challenge to come back if possible as well. So that's what's been happening on the pitch. Off the pitch, as Ben was saying, we have had confirmation of the structure of 1B for next season at least, so we don't know whether this structure is going to stay in place any longer term than that. We'll need to wait and see, but we'll see what happens. So what we do know is that next season will consist of 12 teams, because obviously some of the promises, as they're known in Belgian football, or development squads, as some people like to call them, from some of the bigger boys, perhaps will be joining 1B next season. However, none of them can be promoted. That's worth noting. So there will be a league table that consists of 32 match weeks in total. The 12 sides will play each other twice home and away. So obviously that's 22 match weeks. After match 22, this is where it gets kind of a bit convoluted in Belgian terms, because next season 1B there is going to be playoffs. So similar to 1A, after 22 games in 1B, there is going to be Playoff 1 and Playoff 2. Playoff 1 will consist of the top 6 sides, who will then play each other again, home and away, to see who wins promotion to 1A. Difference ultimately next season is there will only be one side promoted. So whereas at the moment there is the possibility that 2 can go up via the magic playoff, 2-legged playoff, that will not be the case under the kind of current system in 1B for next season. And then the remaining 6 sides in playoff 2 will play each other again twice to see who ultimately gets relegated out of 1B, which will be one side. So if you want to see a nice little diagram that explains all of this without my convoluted explanation, then go and check out our Twitter account, because we did share the Pro League's chart, and we'll make sure we do that again for you over the next few days, so you can see a visual representation of how all of this is going to work. When I saw the news of this a few days ago, I was kind of surprised that they went down the playoff route. I thought that it would just have a straight shootout structure, but they seem to have favoured the playoff route approach like they do in 1A, which is rather odd, because no individual seems to have put their name to the design of this format, which I find rather interesting. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I was going to say, Joris, as someone who has probably seen more iterations and changes in Belgian football than Scott and I, like, where does this one kind of rank for you in terms of changes? Like, what is your kind of initial thoughts when you saw it?
Six teams in the playoff is maybe a bit much, but I do see that they really want to make it feel like they want to make it like a real competition, so that there will be enough games instead of like last season and this season. It's just not that many games in total. And the playoffs, well, whether it should be with 6, that's a bit much. Otherwise, it's not that much different, I guess. Like, playoff systems have always been a case like where then it was not necessarily just the first 6 of the regular season coming there, but I don't know how to explain that in English. I'm sure you also have a system like that, or in the lower leagues, I think, where if you are the best across 12 games or something, you get a ticket to something. Then the next 12 games, the best out of that. There's a separate ranking, and then at the end of the season, every winner of these periods basically plays each other. It's a bit different, of course. It's I guess you also have the playoffs in the championship, of course, but that's with knockouts. It's more like another pool phase, of course. But I guess that part in itself is not so new. That it's 6 out of 12 is a bit much, in my opinion. And yeah, okay, they're just trying to make the reasoning is, I think, that they create a decent league out of it with, what is it, like 32 games, and in the end makes it look like a real league, I suppose. But yeah, 6 teams is just a bit much for this end phase in my mind, especially considering if everything goes to plan, because I know there's still no complete agreement and things like that for if there are indeed 4 development teams in that, then 6 out of 8 most likely that will get there. And also, like, the development team, if they would get there, they could participate in that and are not able to promote. That's all a bit confusing maybe, but well, I do get the reasoning for most part, but they're really trying too much to appease everyone in the whole pro league in general. I think, actually, not only for the specific format, but yeah, there's too much bargaining with everything and no real decisions for long term, which is also a grievance of a few teams in 1B at the moment, I believe, that I've read.
Yeah, I think that's I think there's a real point in that. I think everybody in Belgian football, I think, needs that certainty of knowing what's going to be happening in the medium term. So there does need to be a system agreed that is in place for a while. And one of the problems with this one is we know what will be there next season, but beyond that, we don't know, and that creates uncertainty. I certainly agree with you, Joris. I can see the thinking in, creating the maximum, or trying to create the maximum amount of excitement in terms of who could get promoted as well. So you can see how that theory is reasonably sound. It's interesting because one of the first thoughts I had when I saw it was, this is actually quite similar structurally to the league system in Scotland as well. The top division splits into playoff 1. Certainly the top half of the table does at a certain point in the season. But obviously, because of the nature of Scottish football, it's there are only really 2 sides that can win the league in Scotland at the moment, whereas in 1B it's much more open and competitive than that. Perhaps the biggest thing that I took away from it was the rather bizarre idea that the side who finishes 6th in theory could win promotion to 1A, which is both amazingly positive in one way, but also in a sporting sense, just bizarre at the same time.
But that's nothing new, though. That happens in several leagues, so that's the thing. Like, that in itself does not really surprise me too much. That has been done before and is still in place. For example, in the Dutch second league, I believe, as well.
That's right.
Yeah, I think a couple of my thoughts are that you guys can maybe correct me if I'm wrong on this, but can the development teams be relegated? Are they can go down but they can't go up, or they just can't go anywhere?
Yeah, they can go down. I think that's the idea at least, but like actually there's still that's still very unclear as well. But I do believe that the idea at the moment is that they can go down and go up, because there will be some teams. Yeah, how that will work, I don't know. But actually, I do think they can go down. Yes,
because like that's what I'm thinking. Is like, okay, well, if you put this in place, say there's like 4 development teams that come in. If you put this in place for 4 years, they could all get relegated. We saw Club Next like obviously struggled when they were in there. Obviously there'll be more of them and stuff, but I don't know what's the. It just seems. I guess that I have my opinions on second teams being allowed to partake in like higher levels of the national game. I feel like we could probably talk about that for a long time and disagree about that. Like I've seen it in Germany. I don't like it at all. In the German third tier, I think it just is a bit annoying for other teams. I guess with Belgium, it's different because it's all about what can teams financially actually afford to play in the second tier. So I get what you guys are saying in terms of they want to create it to make it feel a little bit more like a proper league. There's a little more games, more sort of that sort of stuff. So I think I'm open to see what it's going to look like and see how it plays out properly when we do get to that. And I guess I could imagine if you were a side that were miles ahead in first place and then lost in the playoffs and that sort of stuff. But again, I think you'd still be fine. And it is kind of, if you see it in the English Championship, sometimes where a team in sixth will win the playoffs over a team that's finished third and finished miles ahead of them. But everyone goes into the season knowing that's going to be the case and knowing there's a possibility of that happening. So everyone's kind of on an equal playing field to start the year. So it's interesting. We'll see. I guess we'll see what it's like when it does happen.
The one thing there is, though, of course, like the one thing that this thing is like not necessarily that the sixth team can get it, but like the first team would not get it despite it because there's only one spot to give away. Yeah, okay, that part is already a bit weirder. That's already more, because even in Dutch tier, second tier, I think the first promotes automatically, and then from there on, some more spots could be divided. They actually also have quite a convoluted system, to be fair, but then the teams below the first divide the other tickets, and that makes more sense as well. Same with the championship, I guess, where the first 2 spots are clear, and then the third could go anywhere.
And I think that, for me, is the system that I like, because, the first team, they've won the league, they deserve it, they go through it, and everyone else kind of scraps it out, which is always entertaining. But it's how they want to do it. If there's only one spot to go up, like, the league could be over very, very quickly, and then there's nothing to play for. So at least it keeps it a little bit competitive and keeps some stuff going. So I feel like whatever system you put in place, there's always going to be holes in it, and there's always going to be some issues with it. Like even the championship, I don't think is a perfect system with the playoffs and stuff like that. There's different ways of doing it. Germany, you've obviously got third team in one league plays the third bottom team in the other league. Like, every league does it differently. There's just different ways of doing it. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, as plans start to materialize, as things start to happen, we will obviously talk about it a lot more. One thing we do know, and we are certain on, is the cup final. We know who's going to be playing it, and it's going to be Ghent against Anderlecht. Let's quickly go over those semi-finals then. Ghent went away to Club Brugge, 1-0 down after the first leg thanks to a Charles de Ketelaere goal, and they basically rectified and put it back on level terms pretty quickly. Vadis or DJ Ofoy with a deflected goal very early on, then then Castro Montes with a bit of a rocket to put them 2-0 up going into half-time. Dennis Adoy got himself sent off, much to the delight of the home fans. They were clearly loving the referee in this one. Laurent Depotre finished it off, made it 3-0, ended that one there. Ghent marched into the final. Anderlecht and Eupen, they were going in at 2 goals apiece in their one. Quite similar. Anderlecht got very early lead in this one through Maria from a corner. Then a deflected goal from Perviac got Eupen back into it. However, they were on the back foot for most of this. Set pieces absolutely killed them. Anderlecht added 2 more goals, I believe, wasn't it, to win this one, 3-1. They go through to the final as well. I don't know about you guys, but I'm looking forward to this. 2 teams that haven't won a trophy for a while, with some exciting attacking players. Obviously, Ghent's defence is one of their strong suits, but there should be some good football on show. Early kind of predictions for how this one's going to go. Which side do you think will have the edge?
I think Anderlecht are probably favourites for a number of reasons. I think the incentive of winning this, obviously, and achieving European football, regardless of their potential playoff 1 finish, is a massive driver for them. And I think winning the trophy is something tangible longer term for Vincent Kompany to show that everything that's been going on at Anderlecht is equating to kind of real progress. And I think this would achieve that, I think, for them. Having said that, it's all going to be about, I think, how they can cope with that pressure, because Ghent have been playing so well for a while now, are still competing on all fronts, that although Anderlecht for me are strong favourites, I absolutely wouldn't rule out, it wouldn't be a surprise if Ghent won this, because they came into the semi-final, as we discussed last week, albeit 1-0 down on aggregate on club, but managed to turn that around because they went into it with no fear, as we said they should, because of the way that they were playing. So they have nothing to lose at all, and everyone are going to be talking about Anderlecht, and what I was just talking about there, actually, I'm sure that will dominate a lot of the mainstream press and the build up to this game. But this is the potential to be kind of quite a tasty final, I think.
Ask me again 1 week before the final, because it's likely that one of the two teams will have made playoff one and the other one just fell out, just didn't make it. So that could really influence how I feel about and how both these teams go into that final, and how I feel about who will win as well. But it should be a very even game by the looks of it right now.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. So that'll be taking place on the 18th of April, which isn't actually that far away for those of you that are thinking that's probably quite far away. We are actually in March. So yeah, that one's definitely one to look forward to. In terms of this weekend coming up in the Pro Leagues, on Friday we have Leuven hosting Union, Mechelen and Charleroi on the Saturday, little playoff 2 battle there. Zultenberg against Open, as we've spoken about, also on Saturday, and Cercle Bruges against Kortrijk. Those kick off at the same time. Oostend then host Club Bruges Saturday evening. Anderlecht and Antwerp in the playoff 1 battle on Sunday afternoon. Genk host St. Sluden in the derby Sunday afternoon as well. Beerschot host Ghent after that one. And we round off with another derby with Standard Liège against Solang. In terms of Mola Sports, Friday, it's Leuven against USG. Oostend versus Club Bruges on Saturday evening. And then the lunchtime kickoff, Anderlecht against Antwerp. So if you're in the UK and you want to watch Will Downing's commentary, you can find those 3 games. For him, it's quite nice. He's got them spread over the entire weekend, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. He's not having to do 2 in a day, which I can imagine is quite tiring. Anyway, I think that probably just about wraps it up for this episode. Scott and Joris, thank you so much for joining me on this one.
Always a pleasure, and we'll see you next week, everybody.
Hear you soon. Yes.
Thanks as always, guys. And yeah, if you are listening to this one, you may or may not have been able to listen to our PAOK special. Obviously, we have PAOK against Ghent coming up on Thursday evening, and we have recorded a special episode on that one, so definitely check that one out. And while you're checking that one out, why not give us a rating if you can on the podcast choice app that you use. Spotify can do that now. Apple do it. Most podcast sites do it. So please do leave a rating if you are so obliged. You can also get in touch with us. You can tweet us at Belgian Podcast. You can also find us all individually on Twitter through that account as well. Alternatively, you can also email us. It's belgianfootpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks once again for listening, everyone, and we'll see you soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.